Okay, so this is my review of Raised by Wolves, episode 9, Umbilical. This is written by showrunner Aaron Guzikowski and directed by James Howes. So I'm going to start covering with the main plot line of the episode with Mother and the children, and we'll then wrap up with Marcus's story. So we see the Tempest is going back to the wreckage where she saw her mother, and this is where she runs into her rapist, the crazy dude with the helmet. And it's interesting, he can actually see through that helmet. That is confirmed in this episode when he looks through at Tempest. We get this kind of cool visual of her in his viewpoint. But Mother shows up here to stop Tempest from killing him because she needs his blood to keep her fetus alive. Literally saying the line, "I'm feeding my fetus." So what's interesting is when Tempest is walking back with Mother, and Tempest is like, "You got pregnant through a sim pod?" And Mother's confused too how it happened, but she's like, "My creator made it possible." And even Tempest is like, "You sound religious now." I love how this show toys with that back and forth, where they constantly have the atheist characters doing things that religious people would do, which is making up lies to children to teach them lessons and also to put fear in them, and telling, again, the opposite effect stories to comfort them that they know may be a fairy tale. It's interesting, the story with Mother having a fetus, because we saw her have this sex scene in the air with this sim of her creator, which is probably this evil entity that's governing this whole show. So it has that Rosemary's Baby type of feel to it, that she's got this almost demonic child in her stomach, and you're not sure how exactly it's been made. And what's interesting about adding this fetus to Mother's character is it gives interesting conflict to her original mission, where she's above all else protecting those children. And now she's saying that she has a feeling she wants to keep this fetus alive, as she does still want to protect Tempest. So it will make an inner conflict in her own story. And I'm sure that will become an issue as the show progresses, where she might have to make a choice between the fetus and her own children. So we'll see now. What's really set up well in this episode is this philosophical discussion that goes on between Paul and Campion. Paul brings up his mouse is back and that he had dropped it through a pit, but because it came back, it's proof that Saul is real, that Saul has brought back his mouse. But Campion's like, "Well, my sister fell through a pit and she came back crazy." Places some doubt in Paul's character. We'll touch more into this Paul versus Saul story that's long game the show's setting up in some scenes later on, but it's actually really set up here when Sue and the children find this wreckage and Holly finds this tooth. It's the tooth of Romulus, and Holly sees this as a holy relic from Earth. And she says quickly about this Romulus character that him and his brother were raised by a she-wolf who lost her cubs. So this is directly from Roman mythology. It is the story of Romulus and his brother Remus. And in that story, they're raised by the she-wolf, like she says, and it will eventually lead to them having a big conflict about how to really start this new civilization between the two brothers. So it's hinting to you where this show's going. You can already look at the she-wolf obviously being Mother here, and that she lost her cubs in the first episode being the children that she originally had to watch, and that Romulus and Remus are actually, in this story, Campion and Paul. And it really sums up the title there in a nutshell, Raised by Wolves. And Holly here believes that Saul led her to this holy relic and to preserve their culture. I don't know, it was so funny to me though when Sue just says to Holly, "Keep your tooth, I don't care, let's find something actually useful." Basically just like, shut up kid. I just felt bad for Holly here. But going back to Mother and Tempest here, and this rapist behind them, they're walking and they see across this terrain shiny metal objects in the distance. Now what's important here is when they actually go to these metal objects, you'll see there's a point of view shot from a super far away distance looking at them from this mysterious person or creature entity that's watching them, and you hear some breathing too, so it just adds to what is exactly going on here. And they even have Mother say the line, "These were placed here recently," so obviously it was just placed by this person or creature, and wanting them to find it. And you see Tempest realizes it has pictures of androids here, imagery of Saul, and she says it reminds her of tarot cards from Earth. So there's a lot of stuff going on here with these cards, and it's directly connected to this entity we don't know. But right here, this is when our two groups actually cross paths, and everyone here actually protects Mother from Sue. And you see when Mother's informing everyone about the fetus here. I also laughed. I couldn't help it when she says to Campion, "Do you want to say hello to it?" And he literally says hello to it like it's going to respond. I don't know why I thought that was so funny. I don't know how I feel about Campion. He's a little frustrating of a character. I know on Reddit he's really not popular. He kind of reminds me too of little Robin Aaron in Game of Thrones who's sucking on the teat. Very similar in looks as well, and kind of annoying in the same ways. So you see Mother has a similar scene here with Sue that she had with Marcus earlier, calling her out about her lying to Paul, calling her out that she used a face swap, and she's like, why do you care for him if he's not yours? And this is where Sue's like, I have human empathy, something you can't understand. But like Mother did with Marcus, she's trying to connect to her on the point of being atheist. That this could be useful for her in her mission to start this atheist civilization. And she's like, I understand we must lie to spare feelings of these humans. So it goes back to, again, that theme of even atheists in this story find ways to make up things to spare hurt, and not, there really isn't any path to just full-on truth. And she says to her, you seem to be a successful mother even if you're not a natural one. And right here it kind of clicked to me too that, okay, they're definitely setting up Sue for some sort of reveal in her past, and it turned out being that she had a miscarriage, so it makes sense why she's so compassionate to a child that isn't hers, like a Paul. But we'll delve into that when that scene comes up. So we'll see here the mother grabs one of those metal cards, and it's the one with the imagery of the androids. And she uses it, scans it, and it's like a sim again. And she's going into this world she's in. It's all dreary, and there's just hooded figures everywhere around this cube-like figure that's just pouring, it seems like, that milky goo that she's made of. So we don't really know what's up with that. Any theories, please put down below. But now the rapist she's attached to reverses the blood flow. He gets some of her energy, rips the tube out from her, and he goes for Tempest. But Holly saves the day here, looks at the tooth she found, looks at it for inspiration and bravery from Saul, she thinks. But Holly comes through to distract the rapist from Tempest. Tempest grabs the head. I love when she just throws the head of the security bot. And this was a really cool scene because he still runs after her before his head's about to explode, but it's a pretty cool payoff when it does explode. Right before he's gonna kill her. The explosion in the helmet was sick, and I love the beautiful shot where it's from her point of view looking up in relief and seeing these 3 moons. I love the planets that are in this show, and all of the set design is beautiful. Everything you look at is amazing, but that imagery in particular, being on these planets with all the moons, reminds me a lot of that video game Halo and some of the levels in it. Gives me a little nostalgia. And it was just a nice touch, her saying it's over, so it was a good payoff for Tempest's character here. So before we come back to the main crew, because Father comes to see them, let's go to the top of the storyline with Father and Marcus here. So we see Marcus is laying now in the wreckage that he caused of burning down this church. This is still so strange to me that the other members of his tribe here just bounced. And he even says, where did they go? I don't know. There wasn't any direct reaction to him burning down their church. Really strange. So we see the mystery behind the Morse code. We knew it was Father saying Saul is light. And the reason he was saying this is there was some of Father still in there, knowing that was the password to reactivate him to his old self. Hunter's the one who figures this out, and he's all happy when Father's back, but I'm just still mad at Hunter, and maybe we could have got a scene before this, giving us more insight into Hunter's mindset and maybe regret of what he did selling out Father. But now all of a sudden, everyone in Marcus's tribe reappears, and they're all cool with following him to this holy landmark that is Saul, supposedly. There's no questioning about him going AWOL and burning this church down. They're just blindly loyal to him still. But when they get to this rock, Marcus is so crazy now that he actually thinks Hunter is lying, takes his arms trying to see if Saul will burn it, but Hunter's clearly not lying because he didn't burn his arm. And then overnight, Hunter and Father peace out and they steal the ship. I just thought it was so funny and comical too, where Marcus yells at this guy in the team, Dorian, "You were on guard, Dorian." And he's just like, oops. Yeah, he was just sleeping in on this one, skipping his shift. I thought it was so funny. And then when he comically screams Marcus, I thought that was just unintentionally funny. And to add to the humor here, Marcus slits Dorian's throat. I was just crying laughing when Lucius reacts to this by going and then bringing him down. That is the funniest reaction you can have to just your team member getting his throat slit. No one's taking their gun out on Marcus. This would be the perfect time for them to confront him. I don't know. I just thought it was so silly. And you see Father now and Hunter reunite with everybody, and Campion hugs Father and even has this line, "Don't leave me again." That's twice now. Yeah, seriously. I think we can all relate to that as the audience. It's too much of the Father dead and then Father brought back to life. Westworld falls into this trap a lot. A lot of shows with androids and robots fall in this trap where they overplay the card of bringing someone back, and it eventually will take the weight of any death away, and you don't trust the show anymore with that, and that can really hurt it. So I hope they slow down with that, especially obviously with Father. And you'll see that Sue starts giving her blood now to help Mother. So she's come around to Mother, and she opens up about this miscarriage story, and it explains why she embraced Paul so much in the beginning of her story with Marcus, and that they'd even take this kid on. And she has this line, "I suddenly understood at that moment, when people can't believe their luck, they have to make up a god to thank for it." Again, that interesting religious themes they go into between atheists and people who believe, and how we all have a little of both in a sense, and what kind of circumstances would drive you to that. So what's interesting here with Paul is that he starts hearing the voices come in the cave. And he goes outside and burns the metal pieces. And he says, "Praise Saul," and the voices stop. So who he believes is this Saul, this mystery entity, as the audience we know is crazy. He thinks he's helping him, but he actually stopped him here. And then Paul goes to Campion and says, "I just have a feeling, I know it, that Saul put this baby in Mother." And in a sense, he's right, because whatever this mystery thing is, it is the cause of this. But it's not the type of thing he thinks it is. Then he says this line, "He's not evil, like you said, Campion. He's trying to help us. This baby will change everything." And that's where Paul's wrong, is that clearly this thing is evil. I mean, we've seen this thing lead this rapist to rape everyone in the pods and then making Marcus go mad. So it's really interesting to see these believers fall into the traps of this mysterious entity, and that entity working on their beliefs. And it's also setting up this long game clearly between Paul and Campion, where they're going to see things differently. I'm going to take a hot take here and say that I think Paul is the best character on the show. He's the most interesting, and that's also a tribute to the actor. Is incredible. I'm blown away how good this child actor is. And what's interesting, when you have a lot of child actors in a show, you'll kind of see a big scale, levels of performance. It's more variant, and there's always usually one that blows you away. You see that in Stranger Things with Will, and I think here it's Paul. So the baby ends up being fine. It moves, and you see that Mother thanks Sue, and they're having a liking to each other now. So we got our final scene now with Marcus, what's left of the crew, and Lucius takes this long to say something to him about his suspicions with Marcus. Let all this other stuff already happen with Marcus. He's just an idiot. And he decides not to shoot him for some reason, but hits him with a rock and falls over the cliff. Again, a little comical when it shouldn't be. This whole side story with Marcus in this episode was not that great, unintentionally funny, where I thought Mother's side of it was really good, and especially the Tempest parts. But it ends the episode with this story, and you see Lucius takes Mother's eyes from Marcus and feeds them to him. And it seems like he spits some of it up or chews some of it up, and the goo's coming out. I don't think he's dead. I don't think they're going to get rid of that actor yet in Travis Fimmel. He's too popular. They need him for the show. And it's going to be interesting, that effect he has of having eyes in his system. But as a whole for this episode, leading to the finale, it's a little disappointing for a penultimate episode in a show that was a little bit more at a slow pace. I still think it's pretty good. I would give this episode an 8.2, but not great, and especially, again, because of my concerns with how silly Marcus's story was in this episode. But there obviously are some bright spots here, and I'm still really excited to see what the finale brings, and I hope it leads us on this exciting note for a second season, and we get some good payoffs here. Let me know what you thought of this episode down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond to as many as I can. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss my review of the finale of Raised by Wolves. I'll also be reviewing Haunting of Bly Manor, and I am also reviewing The Boys at the moment. If you like what I do here, I'd appreciate any support I can get, and the best support you can give is a $2 monthly donation. It will help me do more videos for you guys, to be able to do this full time, do more interviews as well, and give you guys as much content as possible. So I'd truly be grateful if you can make a donation, and if not, that's totally cool as well. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter and Instagram for more of me, and I'll see you next time.